Welcome back to the channel, guys. Recently found this new old stock 5-piece set of pliers made by Craftsman. Figured it'd be cool to unbox them and talk a bit about these pliers with you today. Also, more in general, wanted to touch on the flush rivet design that Craftsman used. They had several different types of pliers that were available with this flush rivet design and these black handles. By my estimation, there was over 21 individual types of pliers that you could get. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. I'll also show some professional pliers, some high-vis pliers. So the thing that stands out about this box, we got on the front there, right? New Craftsman Duckbill Pliers. So I'm curious when we look at the date code on these pliers, what year we'll find that the Duckbill Pliers were brand new. But, you know, obviously on the packaging, they're making a big point to call these out. Extra long handles for added reach and leverage, rectangular nose. Of course, a duckbill plier has a different shape, it has that rectangular shape compared to a taper shape that a needle nose or a long nose pliers have, like you see over here in the middle. And then precision broached, serrated teeth for superior gripping performance. Now, I never thought about that. But thinking about how gears are made, how splines are made, makes sense that they would use a broaching process to develop that profile. So let me take these out for you guys. And for this set, what's it contain? We got 8-inch duckbill, 7-inch wide jaw diagonal cutters, 8-inch long nose, 8-inch slip joint, 9.5-inch arc joint, which we'll talk a bit about more. And this is set 45275. So let's start off with the duckbill pliers, since according to the packaging, they're the star of the show and they're brand new. So get a nice shot of those there. Craftsman 45087. WF, of course, stands for Western Forge. USA proudly on there. And then we got an H for the date code. So I looked up the Western Forge date code chart, and H actually stands for 1993. So we got pliers here from the early 90s. And so you can see the duckbill pliers. They got that rectangular shape. They're not tapered like the needle nose. So we got the pair of needle nose over here. Of course, Craftsman always called them long nose, but I'll get you side by side. You can see the difference in shape there. Duckbill would help sometimes when you're trying to grab things, right? And needle nose will slip right off. You get a little more surface area to grip with the duckbill pliers here. So I figured we'd talk a little bit about what was available for flush rivet design black handle pliers. With the duckbill pliers, the only offering Craftsman had was the 8-inch style. So kind of simple if you're trying to collect the duckbill pliers. All right, so since I took out the needle nose pliers, why don't we take a look at those? So these are 45103. Western Forge again. H date code, that makes sense because they're all the same set. You can see we got a nice pair of cutters on these needle nose. You can see the teeth. And so these are the 8-inch style of needle nose pliers. Now, when it came to needle nose, Craftsman did have a few different offerings. So they also had a 6-inch needle nose offering, which I got here. So the part number on those is 45102. They also have cutters on them. So we got an 8-inch, we got a 6-inch. I'll show you a couple other options that we had here. So we got 8-inch, 6-inch. We also had 6-inch bent nose pliers, 45104. These are definitely handy. I've used them a lot recently when getting some of the retaining clips back in place on round head fine tooth ratchets. Now the fourth option that Craftsman offered in this style plier is the 45085. So this is the long reach, long nose plier. This is the 8-inch version here. As you can see, there's no cutters. Obviously, it's a little easy to confuse these depending on what view you have of them with duckbill pliers, but these are definitely needle nose pliers. So these are the 4 offerings that we had from Craftsman in terms of needle nose, or as they called them, long nose pliers. Again, you had an 8-inch long nose, a 6-inch long nose, a 6-inch bent long nose, and an 8-inch long reach long nose plier. Now, one other nuance to consider with this flush design pliers is that Craftsman did offer them in some high vis sets. So I got a pair of the 8-inch long reach long nose pliers here in the orange high vis handles. Need to clean them up a bit, but one of the tricky things is Craftsman didn't use a different part number. So you can see there, if the camera would focus, 45085 on the orange handle, long reach, long nose pliers. And we got the same part number, right? 45085 on the black handle version. So I kind of wish they had done something different there, you know, not repurpose the same plier number or part number for orange and black handle pliers, but Craftsman was a bit notorious for making some poor choices with their part numbers. But those are long nose or needle nose pliers in a nutshell when it comes to this flush rivet design. Let's take a look at some other pliers we got here. So we also got a set of channel locks, as people call them, water pump pliers, tongue and groove pliers, all kinds of different names for these guys. Craftsman actually called them arc joint pliers. And so we can see 45381 there. That's the 9.5-inch arc joint plier that Craftsman offered. This is the most common style that you'll find when you're looking at them in yard sales, flea markets, eBay, what have you. But there was 3 other sizes of arc joint pliers that Craftsman offered. Now, I only have one other size here. It's the 7-inch style. It's 45385. Now, they did have 2 larger sizes. They also had a 13-inch and a 16.5-inch arc joint plier sets. One other thing I'll mention is that, you know, in general, I'm showing you today the black handle pliers, but there is also Craftsman professional pliers that had a different style handle on them. So just to compare and contrast a little bit, there was 2 different types of Craftsman professional pliers. There was the gold style on the left here. It says Craftsman on there. Obviously, right, a little compare and contrast, you can see that the jaw is a bit different. The serrations on the jaw are a bit different as well compared to the regular Craftsman line. When you're looking at the gold Craftsman Professional versus the black and red Craftsman Professional, the jaws are the same. You know, there was some stylistic differences in terms of the shape of the handles, the texture, and the material used for the handles. But for the most part, right, when you look at the jaw and the serrations, it's the same thing. So what else can I tell you about arc joint pliers? They also made a high vis version. I'll show you an example as well of if you got any of these. All of these pliers, in addition to being available in sets like I just showed you, and you know, they came in a box, they also came packaged individually. So here's an example of what that would look like. So you can see they're right 9.5-inch arc joint pliers. And this is how they would be individually packaged if you picked them up that way. So those are arc joint pliers. Let's look at what else we had in the set. So in the set, we also had a nice pair of slip joint pliers. 45379 is the part number on these guys. Flip it over, you know, you got the nice flush joint that we've talked about. Just for comparison's sake, I have a pair that is the older style with essentially a bolt and a nut on the other side. Now, some folks prefer these because you could tighten them up if the joint ever got sloppy. But on the other side of the coin, you can see how much difference you have there in terms of the profile of the pliers. So if you're trying to get into somewhere tight, if you're trying to get around some type of obstruction, obviously the slip joint pliers have a much narrower profile. It definitely is desirable in quite a few different scenarios. So with slip joint pliers, the 8-inch version is a little harder to find. That was one of the things that stood out to me about this set, was that it came with 8-inch slip joint pliers instead of 6 3/4. 6 3/4 slip joint pliers seem to be kind of everywhere at yard sales or on eBay. Those are the ones that you kind of have no problem at all finding. And then of course they made 3 different sizes in total. They also made a 10-inch pair of slip joint pliers, which I'll get out for you here. So the set that I'm showing you today came with the 8-inch in the middle. There's also a 10-inch set of slip joint pliers, 45380. These are pretty hard to come by. It's a nice big pair of pliers. And then just for comparison's sake, I'll take out a set of 6 3/4 slip joint. So thinking about flush joint pliers, the larger sets came in a box like what we started with. I showed you the individual packaging for open stock pliers. They also sold a lot of 3-piece sets or 4-piece sets in this plastic sleeve. You can see here, right, they had 5-inch diagonal, 6 3/4 slip joint, 5-inch utility, which is basically a set of Linesman pliers, in this specific set, 45213. So it's kind of interesting when you go back through the catalogs and see all the different things that they had offered. At least I find it interesting. So the 6 3/4 slip joint pliers that you're going to see everywhere when you start looking for them are 45378. So there you go. When you're thinking about slip joint pliers, they offered 3 different sizes: 6 3/4, 8-inch, 10-inch. 8-inch and 10-inch are definitely desirable, talking in terms of resale value or just collectability. So if you find these sizes, I'd definitely grab them. 6 3/4, like I said, you can find anywhere. Okay, so 8-inch was in the set. Put these guys away. The other set of pliers to look at is a set of diagonal cutters. Now, on the box, the set originally came with a pair of wide diagonal cutters. Unfortunately, they got swapped out for a new set of diagonal cutters. So what we're looking at here is a pair of 6-inch Craftsman diagonal cutters. Part number is 45075. Western Forge as usual. So with diagonal cutters, Craftsman offered quite a few different styles and sizes. So I got the 6-inch here. They also offered a 5-inch, which is 45077. Unfortunately, the part numbers and the sizes of the pliers are not easy on your brain. They also offered a 7-inch diagonal cutter, which is 45076. So yeah, part numbers and the sizes are unfortunately a little confusing. If you wanted the complete set of regular diagonal cutters, there's your 3-piece set right there, 5, 6, and 7-inch. Of course, there's more. They had a wide diagonal cutter set of pliers, which we saw in the box here. I don't actually have a pair here on hand, but you can see 45074, and those were 7-inch wide diagonal cutters. Now, the other set that I do have on hand is actually harder to find, which is the 45084 7-inch bent wide diagonal cutters. So these are brand new as well. The AD Western Forge date code represents pretty recent production relative to 1993 at least. AD date code stands for 2015. So not that old. But these are some great pliers. All right, so let's get back to the set that was in the box. Just to give you some perspective now that we've talked about all these different pliers. So we had 8-inch slip joint, which are a little harder to find. 6-inch diagonal cutters, which are pretty standard. 9.5-inch arc joint pliers. I'd say those are pretty standard as well. The duckbills are nice. Those are a little harder to find. And then, of course, the 8-inch needle nose, I'd say those are a little harder to find too. The 6-inch are a lot more common. So overall, this is a pretty good set of pliers, I think, for the price at the time. You know, of course, you could buy them all individually, but you're saving money getting them in a set. I'll talk about the one set of pliers or style that wasn't represented at all was Linesman Pliers. So Craftsman offered 3 sizes of Linesman Pliers. The most common size that I've found is the 7-inch size. And those are part number 45093. You can see the cutters that they have in there. This is a pretty well used pair. But whenever I use the Linesman Pliers, I've been happy with this style. I found that, you know, the cutters stay sharp. You get plenty of grip with the jaws there if you need to twist some wires. I've been happy with these for Linesman Pliers. So they had 7-inch, they had 8-inch, and then the size that's really hard to find is a 5-inch pair of Linesman Pliers, which came in this set that I showed earlier. New, smaller size for access into tight areas, high leverage design for increased cutting and gripping ability, induction hardened edge for increased cutting ability. This 5-inch style is 45088. Like I said, they're harder to find, but if you want to get all 3 styles, there's the 5-inch, 7-inch, and then 8-inch Linesman Pliers. So I think I covered quite a bit in terms of solid black handle, flush rivet design pliers that Craftsman made. Of course, it's a rabbit hole. There's always more to explore. If you have ever seen these are pistol grip needle nose pliers. So this specific pair is 45261. They also made a pair of pistol grip slip joint pliers. They usually sold them in pairs as 2-piece sets. So something interesting, something different to look out for. Like I said, the rabbit hole of pliers that Craftsman made is pretty deep. Tried to do it decent justice today. Another nuance to consider is that for the 80th anniversary, Craftsman made a bunch of 80th anniversary tools. So that included arc joint pliers. Now, again, the part number, let's get a real close-up on there for you, 45381. The same as the regular pliers I just showed you, 45381. The only difference is it says 80 years on it. So, I mean, from a collector's point of view, I guess it's kind of cool. But literally the only difference is just 80 years stamped in the middle there. But it's yet another variation to collect. So, yeah, like I said, the rabbit hole is pretty deep when it comes to Craftsman pliers. You got some interesting 80th anniversary pliers you can find. Of course, you got 2 pairs of the pistol grip pliers that you see here. I actually really like these. I think depending on, what you're working on, this can be a lot easier on your hand, on your arm, depending on what you're trying to grab, what you're working on, what you're trying to access. So I really like these style pliers. So I think that's about it for what I got today in terms of Craftsman pliers. Definitely hit on a fair number of different types and styles. I will leave you though with a little bit of what's coming up next. So I found these Craftsman made in France 45376 water pump pliers, channel locks, I guess you wouldn't really call them tongue and groove, right? They're more of a slip joint style. But anyways, found these kind of funky looking things. So that kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of, well, are they in the catalog? How rare are they? Have other people found these? And so I got a video coming up that covers these pliers, as well as what I've determined are the rarest Craftsman pliers that have ever been made. I'll give you a hint. They come from the Craftsman Professional line, and they have these style handles on them. So stay tuned. I got another good video coming there about Craftsman pliers. Thanks as always for watching. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and please let me know in the comments what you like.